It is a profound truth that there exists a test which the soul endures in absolute silence. This test lies beyond the reach of therapists, beyond the pages of self-help books, beyond even the understanding of those who love you most. You may have lived through years believing you were simply surviving difficult times, quite unaware that you were in fact undergoing the most rigorous examination a human consciousness can ever face. In my decades of work, I have studied these invisible initiations that reshape certain souls completely. I have observed that some individuals pass through what I have termed the process of individuation by means of a doorway of profound suffering, a suffering that leaves no external scars, yet transforms everything within. The signs of this transformation, however, are not obvious. They manifest in the most subtle of ways, recognizable only to those souls who have themselves walked this path. Perhaps you have already passed this test without knowing it. Perhaps the evidence is written in your energy, in the way you move through the world, in the quality of your presence that others sense but cannot name. These 7 signs we might explore are not achievements to be celebrated with fanfare, but quiet recognitions, an inner knowing that one's consciousness has been forever altered by its encounter with its deepest truth. I have come to understand that certain souls undergo what can be called a second psychological birth during their lifetime. This birth does not announce itself loudly. It happens in the spaces between words, in the silence after storms, in the moment when you realize that the person you thought you were fighting to become already lives quietly within you. The essential question, then, is not whether you are worthy of this transformation, but whether you can recognize that it has already begun. Like a tree that grows stronger after surviving a lightning strike, the psyche develops a new form of resilience. This is not the brittle strength that resists all pressure, but the flexible power that bends without breaking, that incorporates challenge into its very structure. One learns to metabolize difficulty in a way that transforms poison into medicine, chaos into clarity. The first sign reveals itself in your relationship with solitude. Where once aloneness felt like a punishment, it has now been transformed into a sanctuary. I have written extensively about the abandonment complex, that deep psychological wound which drives us to scatter our energy in desperate searches for approval and connection. When this complex no longer governs your choices, something fundamental has shifted. Your energy ceases to disperse itself in seeking validation from without. A particular quality of stillness emerges in those who have passed through their soul's most demanding trial. It is not the stillness of withdrawal or depression, but the quietude that comes from no longer needing to convince anyone of your worth, including yourself. You find yourself capable of being genuinely alone without that restless urge to fill the space with noise, activity, or other people's energy. This solitude becomes creative rather than destructive. It is in these quiet moments that you discover your best insights arise not from interaction with others, but from communion with the deeper parts of yourself that only emerge when the external world grows silent. I have identified this capacity for meaningful solitude as a hallmark of the individuated personality. You may begin to notice how others flee from themselves through constant social engagement, endless entertainment, or relationships that serve as distractions rather than true connections. There is no judgment in this observation, only a quiet recognition of patterns you once followed yourself. The paradox becomes clear. The more comfortable you become with your own company, the more attractive you become to those seeking authentic connection. Your nervous system has recalibrated. Where once the unknown triggered automatic anxiety, you now approach mystery with what I have called active imagination. You develop an appetite for the liminal spaces where transformation lives, those threshold moments where one version of yourself dissolves and another emerges. The second sign manifests in your relationship with your own shadow. Much of my career was spent exploring shadow integration, the process by which we stop rejecting the darker aspects of our personality and begin to work with them consciously. This integration occurs within you in ways that would have been impossible before your trial. You develop a brutal honesty with yourself about your capacity for manipulation, your hunger for power, your ability to wound others when threatened. Rather than terrifying you, this self-knowledge becomes a source of strength. You recognize these impulses not as character flaws to be eliminated, but as primal energies to be understood and channeled consciously. Your anger transforms from something that either exploded destructively or festered in repression into what might be called a sacred fire. It burns now only what needs to be destroyed in your life. Relationships that no longer serve your growth, patterns that keep you small, agreements you made when you knew less about your own worth. This anger serves your evolution rather than sabotaging it. There is an energetic integrity that others sense in you now. Even when you remain silent, people feel your authenticity because you have made peace with your own contradictions. You no longer try to resolve the paradoxes within yourself, but have learned to hold them consciously, allowing them to create the dynamic tension I identified as essential for psychological growth. The way you process emotional intensity has fundamentally shifted. Where once overwhelming feelings could destabilize you for days or weeks, you now have a container strong enough to hold the full spectrum of human experience. Your emotional range has expanded, but your relationship to these feelings has become one of conscious partnership rather than unconscious possession. The third sign manifests as an immunity to projection. Projection is the unconscious process by which people deposit their unprocessed psychological material onto others. You develop an almost scientific ability to observe when someone is making you responsible for emotions, reactions, or insights that belong to them. This recognition comes without anger or superiority. It is simply data about how the human psyche operates when it lacks self-awareness. Drama that once pulled you in like a gravitational force now feels foreign to your system. You watch triangulations, manipulations, and emotional games with the detached interest of a researcher studying natural phenomena. Your compassion evolves from the codependent variety that sacrifices itself to rescue others into a mature compassion, the kind that offers presence without losing itself in another's suffering. This relates to what I termed the transcendent function, the psychological capacity to position oneself above dualistic conflicts and perceive larger patterns at work. This function activates within you when others bring you their crisis. You no longer experience the automatic anxiety that once made their emergencies your emergencies. Instead, there is a serene recognition of the limits of your responsibility and the wisdom of allowing others to meet their own challenges. You find yourself naturally stepping back from situations where your energy is being used to maintain someone else's emotional equilibrium. This stepping back is not cruelty, but clarity about the difference between supporting someone's growth and enabling their avoidance of necessary lessons. People may interpret your new boundaries as coldness, but you recognize them as the protection of something sacred within yourself. Your relationship with time undergoes a fundamental reorientation. You no longer experience time as a scarce resource to be hoarded or an enemy to be defeated, but as a dimension of existence to be inhabited fully. The fourth sign emerges in your intuitive capacity, which blossoms into a fully activated function. Where once you relied primarily on logical analysis, you now consult an inner knowing that connects you to information beyond the reach of rational thought. This is one of the most profound changes. Synchronicities flow through your life with increasing frequency, creating a sense that events align according to an intelligence far greater than your conscious planning. You learn to distinguish between the urgent demands of the wounded ego and the quiet guidance of the self. The archetype of wholeness that emerges when individuation deepens. Your ability to read the invisible layers of people and situations expands exponentially. You perceive motivations, patterns, and outcomes that remain hidden to others, not through cynicism, but through a refined sensitivity to the energetic information flowing beneath surface appearances. Decision-making no longer requires extensive pros and cons lists. Instead, you develop a direct line to your own ancestral wisdom, an inner counsel that has access to knowledge accumulated not just through your personal experience, but through the collective unconscious. A quality of listening develops within you that goes far beyond hearing words. You attune to the spaces between sentences, the emotions hiding beneath explanations, the soul speaking through the persona. This listening is not analysis, but reception, not judgment, but a witnessing of the full spectrum of human complexity. The fifth sign reveals itself in your embrace of the natural, cyclical nature of psychological development. You integrate the archetype of death and rebirth so completely that you no longer fear the periods when your life seems to dissolve. These times of apparent ending become familiar preludes to expansion and renewal. Your relationship with uncertainty transforms from avoidance into active engagement. Where once you needed guaranteed outcomes, you now recognize that the most meaningful growth occurs in the space between decision and result, in the willingness to act from inner alignment. An energetic economy begins to work within you, protecting your vital resources. Your energy is no longer scattered across dozens of draining commitments. Instead, you learn to invest your life force strategically, like a wise gardener. You understand that growth moves in spirals, not straight lines, revisiting themes at deeper levels. This brings tremendous patience with your own process. Your creativity undergoes a fundamental shift from external achievement to internal expression. You create not to prove your worth, but because creation has become a form of communion with the life force moving through you. The sixth sign emerges in your relationship with external validation. My contemporary, Alfred Adler, and I wrote about the inferiority complex, those wounds that drive us to constantly compare and prove ourselves. This complex dissolves within you so completely that the impulse to measure your worth against external standards feels foreign. You develop what I called inner authority, a psychological structure that validates your experiences independently of social consensus. Your self-worth no longer fluctuates with the changing tides of opinion. Criticism and praise register with similar neutrality, processed as information, not verdicts. This shift frees enormous energy previously consumed in managing your image. Your authenticity becomes non-negotiable. You naturally choose rejection for who you truly are over acceptance for a performance. The way you inhabit your physical body shifts. A groundedness emerges from genuine self-possession. You move through space as someone who belongs to themselves first. The seventh sign manifests as a refined discrimination about how you invest your energy. The process of individuation culminates in what can be called energetic sovereignty, the ability to protect your essence without aggression, simply through conscious choice. Your presence becomes more selective and more precious. You no longer distribute yourself indiscriminately. This is not elitism, but wisdom about the sacred nature of your own life force. A natural authority emanates from you now, not power over others, but power over yourself, which is the hallmark of psychological maturity. The guilt that once accompanied setting limits dissolves. You protect your energy with the naturalness of protecting any precious resource. You learn to recognize those individuals, projects, and relationships that drain your vitality without offering anything of value in return. Your relationship with suffering itself undergoes a fundamental transformation. Where once pain was something to be avoided, it becomes a teacher whose lessons you receive with gratitude. This does not mean you seek suffering, but that you extract wisdom from unavoidable challenges. A stillness follows you now, not an absence of movement, but a presence of deep centeredness. This stillness attracts those who are searching for something they cannot name. You become a living example of the individuated soul. Your relationship with hope matures from wishful thinking into an active faith in the life process itself. You no longer hope for specific outcomes, but develop trust in your own capacity to meet whatever emerges. This second psychological birth marks not just recovery, but a fundamental reorganization of consciousness. You become psychologically independent of your early programming. There is a sense of completion that has nothing to do with external achievements and everything to do with an internal reconciliation. You no longer need to recover from your past because you have learned to create from your present moment. The person you thought you should become is revealed as a limitation compared to the unique being you already are. Your journey continues, but a crucial phase is completed. You have passed through the soul's most demanding examination, emerging not unscathed, but integrated, not unchanged, but more essentially yourself. The test revealed your true nature. The secret I spent my lifetime learning becomes your lived reality. The soul does not grow despite suffering, but through a conscious and transformative relationship with it. Your pain becomes your teacher. Your wounds become your wisdom. You carry the quiet dignity of someone who has met themselves completely and found not perfection, but wholeness. If you recognize yourself in these signs, know that you have passed through an initiation that most will never understand. Your transformation serves not only your own evolution, but creates a template of possibility for others. And your journey of conscious evolution has only just begun.